Okay, so I don't usually sound like this. I don't have such a deep, sexy voice in real life. So if you're here, one half of the presentation might appeal to you, either the gadgets piece or the web services piece. Probably not both. And you might wonder, okay, what exactly is this guy going to talk about? So first, about web services. So you probably heard of them circa 2001, 2002, probably at a Microsoft conference when they were pitching .NET and trying to get everybody to use web services. And then all the WS star crap came along, and really, for most purposes, it's way too much. But I'm here to tell you that they actually are useful, and there's web services out there today that you can use to add great functionality to your gadget or any cool stuff that you're building. And you don't have to use the technology that the big players like Microsoft and IBM are pitching at you. You don't have to use SOAP, although it is a good option in some circumstances. You can use .NET SOAP toolkit to generate a lot of code for you, which is nice, but you don't have to use SOAP. So web services does not equal SOAP. And there's lots of services that are out there for you to use today, such as ones from eBay, other players out there, and a lot of them are free, including eBay's. We made our web services totally free last year, so you can do great stuff using our web services. And there's tons of other web services out there that can give you great functionality to use in your code. So what about gadgets? You might have heard about gadgets. I was talking with somebody yesterday who I was talking about gadgets, and I think he was thinking about stuff like this, actual physical gadgets. So we were kind of talking at each other sort of like that. So Microsoft has gadgets. They use that term to refer to both sidebar gadgets, which I'm sure you've seen a lot of, as also live.com gadgets. This presentation is about specifically live.com gadgets, although the principles in here apply to Vista Sidebar or any of the other gadget, widget, plugin engines that are out there. So there's a lot of terminology problems here. So definition of gadgets, I found this, I think, on Apple dashboard site, is many applications let you perform common tasks and provide you with fast access to information. So gadgets are cool. So if for no other reason, it's interesting stuff, let you do cool little interesting things, and it's fun. So why should I care? Well, as I said, gadgets are cool, and web services are out there that provide you with lots of reusable data and functionality. You shouldn't have to be building all this sort of stuff yourself. And by using web services, you can, basically take all the work out of doing, all the data manipulation stuff. You can get the data using web services, and you can just concentrate on what you're doing, which is building a cool app. So mixing them up in your gadget saves you headaches, is the basic story. So alternatives to using web services in your gadget, and I'm talking about using them directly from your gadget, are if you're using web service on your server and then mixing up the data there, you, one, will have to scale your server to handle the traffic that the gadget might have. Whereas if you're accessing web service directly, then you can rely on the web service provider to scale for you. Also, if you get into server-side programming, there are whole different skill sets required, and that's just icky. So if you're doing gadgets, you're mostly doing client-side stuff, and you may not have a skill set of a server-side coding, and you shouldn't have to worry about that. And I'm here to tell you, at least what we've built, something that's cool that doesn't rely on server-side code, we actually think is pretty cool. So what sorts of web services are out there? So, I was thinking, what kind of web services am I going to talk about? Gee, I wonder. Oh yeah, eBay has some great web services out there. It's not the only one, but it's what I know about best. And I'm just using this, I'll give you a brief overview to summarize what eBay web services are. Just a few slides. I know you've heard a lot about eBay at this conference. No, we didn't pay Microsoft any money. But once you learn a little bit about what this is about, we'll then get into the cool demo and then get into some code. So there are a lot of great features in eBay web services. And I want to provide some of the features that are out there. So there's search feature, and the graphics I'm providing here is kind of hard to provide a graphic of an actual web service. But we have web services that give you the equivalent of this functionality that you actually get on the eBay.com site. So there's search, there's the ability to list items, to do transaction and order management, to do My eBay, eBay stores functionality, including managing your store, adding items to your store, all that sort of stuff. Feedback management, both ways. You can add feedback, you can retrieve feedback. You can do your watch list, you can add things to your watch list, you can download your watch list. So all sorts of cool stuff, including bidding with the special signed agreement. And the basic message is almost anything you can do on eBay's site, you can do using the web services. So there's different flavors of web services. I mentioned before, it's not just SOAP, but that is one of the flavors that we offer. So standard SOAP web services, and also a different flavor that actually came out first. We developed this back in 2000, 2001, before SOAP was standardized. And it's the same basic idea. You're sending XML over the wire. In this case, it's via HTTP post. And both the SOAP and XML web services support the same feature set. So all the calls, all the features that I talked about in the slide before, you can do via each of these flavors. And the calls go over HTTPS, because some of these calls return confidential data, or data that you really wouldn't want to expose when it's going over the wire, such as adding an item, or getting somebody's transactions may include people's email addresses, so you want that information to be secure. Now, we also have a different flavor that we released a couple years ago called REST. You may have heard of REST, and I'll get into explaining what it is in a second. But that goes over HTTP GET, and just over plain HTTP. And we expose REST today for our search call, and in the future, we're looking to expose it for other calls that only return publicly available information. So you don't have to worry about the security, and it gives you a much more flexible model to integrate into stuff like live.com. Now, live.com doesn't support today post and HTTPS, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, but I've heard that they have plans to do so, and there's no technical reason why they can't. It's just they haven't got around to it yet because live.com is in beta. So here's a sample call request for eBay Web Services. And these are two different ways of making the call. There's the XML way, which you see there. This is the get search results call, and the key piece of information is down near the bottom, the query tag, which specifies the actual text query that you want to search on. In this case, it's iPod Nano. So just in the same way where you type in the search in the box on ebay.com, you do the same thing here via web service call. Of course, all this data would be constructed dynamically in your program code. You also have the authentication token, which is specified there. The actual token is much, much longer. And that's basically it. And in the REST API, the way that you specify the data is via URL parameters. So that's the entire data there in that URL. So you notice the query string has iPod and then the star 20 nano, so the URL encoded space. And the request token is what we call a REST token, which is the same basic thing. But so all the information to do the actual web service request is in the URL, which makes it very flexible. And here's the sample call response. Now, the key thing is the same response will come back whether or not you make the call via the XML API, via POST, or via the REST API, via GET. So in this information here, you could get multiple items returned. I've highlighted one of them. In this case, it's an item, get the item ID. You can see information like how many bids there are, the current price, and the title. And there's lots of other information that is available. And you can do cool stuff like specify certain levels of information to return, so you get more information like what categories is the item in. But just by default, this is an example of a lot of the information that you get back. So that's it. That's it for the overview of eBay Web Services. And now I wanted to jump into the demo to show you what we built. So this is live.com. You may have seen it before. Basically, live.com, it basically seems like a portal for geeks. It gives you ability to have gadgets as well as RSS feeds. So there's some pre-built gadgets, like one for stock quotes here. And they have some cool stuff. You can drag and drop this stuff around. So it's interesting. And you can add new stocks here via this little dialog. You can also get RSS feeds. Like here's an RSS feed from eBay store. So you can click on items there. Here's like the one for my blog. And then so there's other cool stuff. Here's the eBay one that we built. So this is our eBay search gadget. Actually, you know what? What I should do first? Well, let me just try doing a query here. So I'll look for an Xbox 360. Of course, if you want to buy an Xbox, the place to go today is eBay. You can't get them in stores. Click return, and very fast, you get back these results. Cool. So after I click around, I can see, you can go next and previous to get new information. Notice here you can see the time left on these, how many bids there are, and the current price. Also, if I click on an item, it'll show me a detail view here. So this gives me more information from the XML. So let me just find a good one here. I think this one. All right, so this is an example that has all the information fields here. So here you notice it has information indicating that the seller accepts PayPal. There's currently 0 bids. This guy's priced it way too high. Here's the shipping price, the time left, and this one has a buy it now, so that's shown here. You notice, of course, the buy it now information isn't shown in the view up here. And you can see the full description, so if I click here, this will actually take me to the eBay site, so I can actually place a bid or do whatever. Now, when we set out to build this thing, we saw what was out there with existing gadgets, and a lot of gadgets have been created basically give you a search box, and then when you do a search, it launches a whole new window. We thought that with live.com to really integrate well into the overall feel of the experience, we want to do stuff in place as much as possible. So that's what our core design principle that we used for this. So all the inline details and stuff like that gives you in-place information. And then it takes you off to eBay when you actually want to do an operation on the site. Now, when live.com supports basically the stuff that's holding us back from using our full web services set, we could do stuff like click watch this item, and then it actually add the item to the user's watch list without leaving the site. That's where we want to get to. We want to have as much functionality as possible in the portal, in the gadget. And I would encourage you, if you're looking at building stuff yourself, to look at that design principle as well, because I think it's very powerful. So other information that I showed you, the paging. Now here's another cool thing. We thought, that it was also important to really work within the constrained real estate that gadgets on live.com give you. A previous iteration had a default layout that was even more space constrained. So that was what we were working with initially. So if I just show you here, if I make the screen smaller, notice, of course, that this breaks over 2 lines. But now if I do a new search, 2 things happened. The titles here actually truncated more, and then one of the columns disappeared. You can still get the information down here, as far as the time left and the current bids, et cetera. But we didn't want to have it split over 2 lines. We wanted to maintain that 1 line per item feel. So we just made that design decision, and we wanted to experiment with that and see how it works. And I think it works pretty good. So it's something to keep in mind. With live.com, you may look at it and say, well, you didn't really have to do all that work, to make sure to really optimize the screen real estate, because most people are going to be viewing it, like this. But I'm hopeful in the future that these gadgets might be able to run in totally different contexts, whether it's on different devices, on the desktop. Microsoft already stated that live.com gadgets will be runnable on the desktop in some way. So we're really thinking ahead to wanting to have as much flexibility as possible when dealing with very limited screen real estates. So that was something we thought was very important. And just to finish, covering the feature set here, if you want to do the full search on eBay, just click on there, and you can get to do the full search results. So we think it's pretty cool. Okay, I'll switch back to slides. So I already covered what live.com basically is. It basically supports RSS feeds and gadgets, and the gadgets are implemented in JavaScript and CSS. Now, the site, it has a beta thing on it, but I've talked to the Microsoft guys, and they basically validated what my feel was. It's still very, very alpha. And we found lots of bugs, lots of quirks, lots of emerging stuff. But it is, there's rapid iterations, and we see it emerging that the site is getting more and more stable and getting more and more features every day. So again, the design philosophy here, this is a key thing to keep in mind. What I noticed when developing this with Rob and Tim from eBay is that this design is sort of like designing for mobile devices. The similarities are there's one, limited screen real estate, and 2, there's limited functionality and APIs. So we're in this, for now, only able to use our REST API. And so we had to make some certain design considerations, make some compromises in order to actually get it to work. Now, there are some differences. One, you're still coding for the browser. So there's certain things that are either available to you or that place restrictions on you to keep in mind, like the ability to have multiple windows and tabs, and also cross-browser issues, which are always there. And also the interaction, because this is basically using AJAX-like techniques, is it's asynchronous. And there typically is more bandwidth to work with. I mean, this would work fine over a dial-up connection, although it is really, really slick when you get to use it on broadband. So I want to get into some of the overall challenges, and then we'll dig more into the actual code. There's a couple big item things that we found. First, and this is the key one, is the security restrictions. So in order to do web service calls in the Gadget, there's certain things, you have to do. The key issue is you can't, out of the box, make calls that go across domains. So if the Gadget's served up from mydomain.com, I can't just automatically call api.ebay.com from the Gadget. Now, live.com, very nicely, gives us a proxy which can proxy the call for us for certain types of data. They support RSS, they support XML. So there's certain constraints. You can't proxy HTTPS yet, as I already mentioned. But so here's basically how you make the proxy. This is Atlas code here, the web.network namespace. And that has a create request method. When you use that method, if you specify one, the type of proxy that you're using, either XML or RSS, you specify the callback method, that's the search query method. I'm sorry, actually the search query is the input parameter. eBay search callback, as you might guess, is the callback. And then you specify what kind of proxy you're using. Excuse me, that's actually where you specify the RSS proxy or the generic XML proxy. So once you do that, then you're able to proxy your XML data, which is cool. Now, the proxy actually doesn't work with all XML data. In fact, it doesn't support XHTML. I think that's something that makes explicitly excluded. But as long as you can serve up your data through web services that are either out there today or that you serve up yourself as XML, as real XML, then you can use this, and it works really well. Challenge number 2, and this is something that's unique to eBay as far as I can tell right now, but I think in general this points out that manipulating XML has a lot of quirks. One thing we found is that in IE, the JavaScript engine can't handle XML data that's wrapped in default namespace. Now, you don't have to know what that means exactly. You may or may not. But in order to work around this, we had to use this ugly regular expressions hack to remove the namespace. So if you see here, it's really ugly. I have to actually take the XML, treat it as text, use the regular expressions, strip out the namespace, and then take the text and actually rebuild a whole new XML document and then parse that to actually get the data out. So it just really offended me. So, but it's stuff like that you're going to find, no doubt, whether it's XML or dealing with other unique things you have to deal with that you'll have to work around. And you should expect that when you're doing this. But it is bleeding edge stuff, and that's the cost of dealing with this stuff in the stage it's in. So now I wanted to bring up Rob Abbott to, actually, I'm sorry, why don't you come on up here, Rob. One announcement that I wanted to make is we're open sourcing the Gadget. Yay. So you can go, and we're using a commercial-friendly license, a CDDL license. So you can go today to searchgadget.codebase.ebay.com, and you can go and download the source code. Actually, the source code is not uploaded up there yet, but the project is open. So let me switch back here. So eBay has this code-based site, which is basically our site for open source developers to collaborate on stuff that uses eBay's web services. So we have projects that are there. Actually, Google contributed one. They built an eBay Watcher panel for Google Desktop, and they actually, just a couple weeks ago, contributed the source code to the code base, which is very cool. And we have stuff up there that's samples and so on. So this is the project here. After the presentation, I'll upload the latest code. We're working on the code up until the presentation, so that's why it's not up there yet. And I should also point out, you can actually go and download the Gadget today. I uploaded it just a couple hours ago. So if you go to microsoftgadgets.com, it should probably be at number 1 in the most recently added list. It's called eBay Search Beta. So if you click on this, you'll see a preview here of the Gadget itself. And then you can add it to live.com using this button. So I would encourage you to do that. And we'd love to hear your feedback on what you think. Especially positive feedback, but we'll take some negative if you want. Without further ado, I'll have Rob walk through some of the code.
Yeah. Thanks, Alan. So Alan invited me up here, and I worked on the Gadget for Alan back in earlier part of this month and last month. He came to us with a sort of a nice little task of building the Gadget for live.com, and I'm in the user experience group at eBay. And part of my job at eBay is actually to evangelize rich user experience. And those of you that don't really know what that means, it means basically anything that's driving Web 2.0 or anything that's really cool, as Alan pointed out. Live.com kind of illustrates that because you can get real-time data into certain parts of the site where it's customizable and personalized to you. So that's part of my job is to kind of build prototypes, and this is sort of one of the prototypes that we've built. And it's one of the things that we hope to be extending later on. So let me jump into the code. And this is the CSS, so let me jump into the JS. I'll breeze through this. I mean, this is probably about 400 or 500 lines of code, so I'm going to go through sort of the key points of a gadget and how we build it and how it works with our web services. So first off, we're registering the namespace for the eBay gadget. So in this case, it's eBay search. And then we're automatically invoking that and building that in the call. So this is automatically called when you come to live.com. When you add it to live.com, it automatically instantiates this, and it fires off this code. Some of the variables that we're putting in, as you may recognize, is the REST call. So we've got our REST URL here. We have our call type, which is get search results. It's the only call supported by the REST API. And we will be extending that later in this year as well. We're going to be supporting more calls. Your token, which is available to you on the code base, and you can sign up and get your token and your user ID.
It's available on developer.ebay.com, which is our developer website.
You might want to have that on the last slide here.
It is. Don't worry.
Good. So then let me scroll down. So we're essentially some variables that we use, like the search items array, and then we have several divs that we use, and then we'll go through some of the gadget code. So the gadget's got a particular platform that we use on live.com. You want to initialize your code and register the namespace as well, as already mentioned. And then you also want to, so when you close out of your gadget, you're also going to want to dump all the events that you've attached as well. Because if you have anything running, you don't want to, and it's also running openly and affecting the CPU utilization, that can be a problem. So this automatically clears that out. So one of the unique things that Alan showed earlier on was the truncation that we were doing. And how we're doing that, we're actually just getting the width of the window and also figuring out what the iframe size is. So that's the client body. Every single gadget on live.com is in an iframe, except for Microsoft. So those are all in line. So what we have to do is kind of grab that, and anytime that you resize the window, we're actually adding a window listener. So anytime that happens, we fire off an event, and when you finish resizing your window, we grab that number, and it could be 500 pixels to 1,000 pixels, whatever your resolution may be. So, and this is what this is the window listener code here. And again, this is going to be all open source, available on the Gadget Gallery and on the eBay code base. So the window listener fires off resize and get width. So, and that gets basically the get width on the client body. I'll go into that later. So to build the initial module itself, we have three main divs. We have a master div that encapsulates the entire gadget itself. That's our master div wrapped around in the body. And then we have the container div that actually supports the search box and the search button that you see when you initially come and you invoke the module itself. And then you have your search results div, which actually has the results items when you query Xbox 360 or you're searching for cars on eBay Motors. That's what that is. And then we also have the detail view. So three main pieces. Scroll down.
So we should just point out here, this is one of the coding in the append child. This is one of the coding things you'll see all over the place when you're building live.com gadgets is this pattern is in order to build your UI, whether it's basically static, building it when you first load, or dynamic with certain events. Can you go back to the append child stuff?
Yeah. Right.
So it's basically where you have to use the document.create element to create the element, in this case here, the form. You have to maybe attach events to it. Or then you have to set a type or size. You just all over the place. And this probably takes up 60 to 70% of the code here. It's very tedious. There's certain, everybody who's developing gadgets knows it's tedious, including Microsoft. But for now, this is what you're basically stuck with.
Yeah.
So if you look at the code, it'll look a lot more complex than it actually is. If you break it down and look at, okay, what's actually building the UI versus what's doing the actual work, it's way weighted towards most of the code is just building the UI.
Yeah, that was one of the more labor-intensive parts of the actual gadget building itself. We didn't have HTML to work with. We had to do DOM scripting all over the place. So it kind of slows you down in your debugging stage, but once you get it running, it runs pretty nicely. And hopefully, I've seen a few instances where there actually will be allowing HTML and some hacks around that you can find in the live.com forums on the Gadget gallery. So one of the key calls that we're submitting here is the submit call. So in the form itself, in the live.com module, you'll see the submit call located here. And then we just fire that off here. So we submit our REST call. We submit all the variables that we invoked in the beginning.
And see that the page equals, so that it calls submit call, and it sets the page to 0. So if you do a new search, it goes to the default page before making the call.
Right. So the URL is actually being built. And Alan, this is something that Alan went over earlier, is that the URL that you basically put into your address bar into Internet Explorer will give you back the actual XML results. So if you actually built this out into just a plain URL, you'd actually get the XML results
and in
back.
fact, and we can show you what that looks like here, so you can see what data we took from the web service and actually created this nice UI around. So here it is.
Yeah, there we go.
Not very usable for just end user. So that's actual raw data. That, I showed you a portion of it in the slide earlier. So.
I have it here, actually.
Okay, cool. Okay, and then down there, so that's the call
so
to the create request.
And then here's the proxy that we were speaking about, submitting the get call through the proxy and returning that data. So when that fires back, it automatically comes back to the REST parse. So we're actually parsing that information out. And if we're successful, which is indicated here, then we're going to go ahead and assign the DOM to the data that we get back. And here's our namespaces hack that Alan already went over. And there's other ways to attempt this, so this is not just the true way, but we are locked into the API return. The XML format, we could not manipulate that, but some of the gadgets that you'll find on live.com actually have their own unique XML returns, so you don't always have to assign an XML DOM to that. So if you've done previous searches or we've got divs rolling in here, we automatically dump that information out because you don't want to see that again. And we'll go ahead and build out the actual DOM piece of this. So do you have the, here it is. Okay, that's when we would hop back and forth. So the first part of the div, as I said, wraps the search box itself. So let me refresh this and show you what that looks like. There we go.
Actually has our cool little logo we put in there.
Yeah. So we've already built out, in the initialization of the actual gadget, we've actually built out the 3 divs. We've got the containing div that supports the search box and the search button. And then we have the search results div that's actually in view, but we have the CSS set to none. So it's not actually showing itself. And it has a table wrapped inside that. And then we also have the view item view, which is the detail view lower in the scenario, as you walk through the actual process. That's also on the page. So I'll do a search for BMW M3 because we get a lot of photos back, so it's actually good for that. Let's get something here. There we go. So, and then this is as I said, this is the div that wraps out the search result information. We're using a table in the actual search results information. You can actually use divs if you want to. And then we also have the div wrapped in here, and we're actually using an unordered list to parse out this information, which I'll go through. Key parts in here.
So that's all the navigation elements, the next and back stuff, building up the DOM tree there. So then it gets into the search results table.
So the search results table is built out here. Some of the key items that we go through, we actually see what's available into the search results call. We have a lot of details that come through the actual XML API, and some of those, do they have PayPal features? Is it a buy it now item? How many bids does it have? So we do a lot of parsing and conditionals on that, and we wrap those around. Here we're actually grabbing the item URL, the item title, and the item current price to populate the information inside the table data tag right here. So each row is actually being populated with that information. And then we're grabbing that from the DOM. So we're actually grabbing it from this XML. So as you see, we have the title. And then let's see what else we got.
So the gallery URL is one of those.
Yeah.
So that's actually in the detail view.
Right, yeah.
So title, current bids, and the time left.
Right. So you can see how the XML DOM actually helps you, because we actually can do a get by the tag name. So if we want to find the store category ID, which is down here, we can say find the store category ID just by calling get elements by tag name. So we're doing it here and here and here. So we're actually getting the view item URL, the title, and the current price from the XML.
Do you want to jump to the truncation code?
Yeah. Okay. Are we doing on time? All right.
Okay, so that's the details view. Same basic idea. You're basically getting the elements from the DOM tree. So same thing.
Yeah. So this is the detail view. And we're getting the gallery URL, so we're actually populating the picture, the number of bids, the buy now price, and the payment information. So the good thing is this is all open source. It's a good view into the eBay actual XML return and how to manipulate that data so you can get your own gadget running. So I'll hop into the truncation code, which is one of the more unique pieces of this. Here we go. So as I said, we have a window listener assigned to the actual gadget itself. So as you're flexing the actual window itself, we're actually firing off get width. Get width finds the document body and the client width. The client width is actually your iframe. So it's actually finding the width of that. And then we do a nice little equation here. We're actually doing a conditional based off of that. And what I'm doing here is I'm finding if say for instance the gadget width is 500 pixels wide, and I only want to show 80 characters in the result item view. So here I'm showing probably about 60 or less here, but as I flex it, I'm actually going to divide that by a certain number. So I'll go to one column and do another search, and you see that flex. So what that allows me to do is that I'm finding what that number is. So if this is actually just getting the width of the iframe and finding out what the actual first letter is. If it's a 5, it's a 4, and if it's greater than 3. So if this is 500 is greater than 300, then I'm going to truncate it by a certain amount. And what I'm doing here is actually if it's 5 is greater than 3, then I'm going to subtract that by my divisible. So I'm dividing everything by 12. So the set number, if it's 500 by divided by 12, then we're going to get the difference of that. And that's going to be what your truncation is going to be.
So did you catch all of that?
What we're going to try to do also for the gadget galleries, we're going to kind of put some detail around the truncation because this is sort of optimized for the actual gadget itself and it's not really self-explanatory. One of the more unique things that we ran into is that listers have a tendency to actually bold out or they'll put all their titles into all caps. And that gives us problems with truncation because we can't get an accurate read on the truncation if it's in all caps. So we strip that out if the all caps extends past 3 characters. So if it's a new item, new will be kept, or if it's a car and it's a certain make and model, like a Range Rover HSE, and that's in bold, or in all caps, then that will be kept as well. But anything past that, we automatically strip out so we can get the correct read on the truncation. And that's one of the more important things. And let me actually show you an example of when we do that. So let's. So this is the detailed view that you're seeing right here, and it's populating this information only. And what I'm doing is actually I'm calling the item title, which is stripped out from the XML DOM return that we have back from the REST API. And then we automatically fire off the truncation as well as the stripping out the caps. So we pull that string in, we evaluate that and see how many actual capital letters are in that, and we bring that back, as well as doing a truncation. And I'm also passing a new extended truncation on this because it's the view item view. Remember, you have your picture, and you also have your title on the same line. So you don't have as much room to populate that information, so it has to be shorter. And that's one thing you can notice here. See, MTech, Aluminum MT, SMG Pedals 2005, BMW E46 M3 is the actual title for this piece. But if you go down here, you see 2001-2005, and BMW E46 and M3 gets dropped off because we have to allow for this space.
Cool. I think let's maybe go to, if anybody has any questions, could you please come up to the microphone? Because while Rob's still up here, because we want to.
I noticed in the code, like at the math, that length function, it's all in one line. Are you finding that making lines unreadable like that is faster for execution?
I don't think so. I think it's if I had to speak for why this coding is the way, I mean, for the JavaScript we develop on eBay.com, we have to optimize for length. Okay. And so it's just our inclination to not comment heavily, not split stuff out nice. I don't think that is the major bottleneck, and I don't know if you concur.
Yeah, so to comment on that, the majority of the code that you'll find in the open source piece of this is not in this sort of efficient manner. But because of how I'm used to coding on eBay.com, we have to have the fewest amount of characters possible because every character counts.
Okay.
But on live, obviously in the live.com environment, it doesn't really matter because we're not on eBay.com. So this is actually sort of the one unique instance that it is sort of broken out in this way. And what I will do for you guys is actually update this function so it is a little bit more self-explanatory when you go through it.
And are you finding that in addition that there are certain coding practices that you've learned in doing all this stuff in JavaScript, which is basically an interpreted language, are you finding that there are certain things that you've learned that you do something one way instead of another? And are there profiling tools that you've used to help you profile your JavaScript? Because that's always been one of the problems with JavaScript. It's very hard to debug and profile. Yeah,
that was the biggest problem. I basically, before I came on this project, I did some of the initial prototyping, and then Rob did a lot of the coding to make it, especially improve the UI for it. And debugging was the #1 most difficult thing. And I wasn't able to come up with a good debugging workflow. I've heard, and there's some articles on MicrosoftGadgets.com, they're supposed to help you debug, especially even debug remotely. I frankly wasn't able to get that to work. And I just relied on setting alert functions and using like especially the Firefox browser has a lot of built-in debuggers, or actually add-on debuggers that you can use there. I don't know, Rob, if you could speak to how you debugged.
Well, I'm not on the JS team at eBay, but my background is in JS, and I know the JS team actually uses their own personal profilers that we have built internally. Firefox has a JS debugger. I would definitely recommend using that one, and it will help you, especially through the DOM scripting is one of the tougher parts. It will actually break out that. And some of the things that actually helped in the debugging section of this, and you'll find this commented out. Let me see if I can find it for you. One of the nice things is that you can just do an alert and actually see the module body in the inner HTML. So this is actually condensing all the DOM script into the actual HTML and how that output looks like. So if you have an HTML prototype or you have a designer put that together for you in the CSS, you can actually compare the two to make sure that it maps up correctly.
One more question. Did you contemplate using XSLT for any of this?
No.
Okay.
And as to the why, I thought because there's not the capability in the live.com platform to basically take HTML and put it in your gadget, I didn't think of that. It didn't make sense that would be a good option. Because basically, whenever you get to putting the stuff in your gadget, you have to use the JavaScript DOM calls to actually get it in there. That's my understanding of how it works right now. There might be some way to do it, and if you can get just basically HTML, regular HTML, one way to do that obviously is to use an XSLT on the web services output, and so that might make sense in the future.
So that kind of led into my question, which was, is there a way to include your HTML in the manifest of Gadget?
There is not a way to include it in the manifest. There's a guy named Donovan West who's actually built tons and tons of gadgets for Live.com. He actually has a consulting business around that. I mean, if you look on Microsoft Gadgets, he built like a great clock. He built his own custom way to basically take HTML, and then his JavaScript code will build all the JavaScript DOM for you. So basically hand off the string to his code and do it. And I was talking with him last night, and he's like, that's great, but then if you use his code, which he's opened up, it makes you rely on this other guy's JavaScript file. So he's hoping, and we're trying to get Microsoft to put that into the Live.com platform. And I think that they've been receptive to that, and they're very busy.
Sure. Was the debugger you were referring to Venkman?
Yeah, I think the Venkman debugger is still #1 for Firefox. Okay, thanks for the question. Anyone else have questions on how we built this? No? Okay, I think let's move back to the presentation. So thanks a lot, Rob, for walking us through that.
How much time are we going on? We got till 2:30. And do CSS.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, one other question. With regard to alerts, did you guys try to use a logging facility in JavaScript at all?
I've tried to do that before on other projects with MIX06, and I didn't, because I wasn't, the overall complexity of this is really not that big. I didn't find that I had to do logging like a multiple stuff. Basically, I hit a bug, and I would then write where the bug hit. I'd set the alert, find out what the values are, go from there. Something I did notice is that the built-in debugging on Live.com is especially nasty because all this included JavaScript all over the place, and it doesn't give you accurate line numbers. So I found myself doing something where I'd intentionally put a bug in just before where I thought it was, just to tell me what the line number actually was, and then I'd count from there. How many lines after do I? Is it actually failing? Because it wouldn't give me accurate line numbers as to where it was actually barfing in my source code.
Thanks.
So on to other web services. So it's there's another question.
Yeah, just
Itching
one
to
more.
get on.
On the resize code that you had for the table, you said you were capturing the resize event like at runtime. Why didn't you just change the length of the line in line instead of waiting until you search again?
That's a good question. This was a prototype, so we just basically built it a certain way. We're going to go back later. I was the only resource on it part-time. So
I don't think there's any technical reason why we couldn't.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was like a performance constraint or something.
No,
I don't think so.
No.
Great, thanks for the question. Okay, so I've been covering eBay Web Services here today, but there's plenty of other web services out there. I would highly recommend, if you're looking for web services that might be able to save you some time, ProgrammableWeb.com has a great resource of APIs. I think it's ProgrammableWeb.com/API. And it's basically this one guy out of Washington State, I think, who maintains this resource. And eBay is listed on there, Yahoo, Amazon, everybody else, as well as a lot of smaller web services that you may not have heard of. Lots of them have REST flavors, so you can use them today, even before Live.com gets updated. So REST itself is very popular, as we're finding, but I do want to stress again that it does have limitations. So you shouldn't just look strictly at REST. There's SOAP web services that basically allow you to do more flexible stuff. There's SOAP toolkits out there that can generate a lot of code for you, although there's not a JavaScript toolkit that I know of for JavaScript. So you're kind of stuck there. Also, something else to keep in mind is that RSS feeds can kind of be like web services too. And when I was talking to Donovan last night, he's built dozens and dozens of gadgets. And I asked him, hey, have you built any that use web services? He's all, no, I haven't had to yet. I've just, basically wrap people's RSS feeds, like from, I don't know, Fox News or MSN Sports or ESPN or whatever, give you lots of these feeds with sometimes can be structured information or semi-structured, and you can then manipulate that data to some degree in your gadget. And if you come up with a cool way to present it, then you can have something actually useful without going to full-blown web services. So just, in the same way that you saw the keynote the other day, or I think it was yesterday, that had some of the simple list extensions in eBay, RSS feeds, as well as others, those can be for structured data too, not just for news and blogs. So it can be a very cheap and easy way to get into thinking about how can I get these external data sources and use them in my gadget. And that's what most people are actually doing today. Something else to keep in mind is that when you use these web services, a lot of them have resources on what you can build commercially. But that's not the case with eBay Web Services. We have, you can basically take eBay Web Services and make money on them if you want to. One way to make money is with your gadget, you could become a member of the eBay's affiliate program, where you basically get compensated with a portion of eBay's revenue that you get for traffic that you refer to eBay, for either active new users or for people who go and bid and win an item. So you'll get 40% and up of the revenue that eBay gets from those transactions. So it's a way to actually monetize the stuff that you're doing with web services like this. So also, I wanted to touch on other gadget and widget platforms that are out there, because it's not just live.com. So just in order, there's Vista Sidebar, which you've seen a lot of. It'll be bundled with Vista, but there are some limited capabilities. We were all hoping out there in the gadget community to have full WPF support in the Vista Sidebar, and it's not there. They took that out. So it's only going to be DHTML. So similar sort of capabilities to live.com. There will be cool stuff, supposedly, where you can drag and drop a gadget from live.com to the Vista Sidebar, which would be really cool. But it's something to keep in mind. Now, I have seen, I've been impressed with some of the gadgets for Sidebar that I've seen so far. So I'm a little bit more encouraged that there might be some workarounds or things that people are figuring out to basically give you some of the WPF-like interfaces, even without the full-blown WPF framework. There's also the Yahoo Widget Engine, formerly Confabulator. This one's been out there for a few years. One of the great things is it has multi-platform support, and this is, I think, still unique. So you can have a gadget that runs both on Windows and Apple, actually. But I found, I run Confabulator sometimes, but the integration with the desktop, to me, still feels clunky, especially in comparison with Apple Dashboards, which is really slick. So Apple Dashboard has good desktop integration, but its drawback is it's not multi-platform, so it only runs on OS X. So if you have an Apple, a Mac, then it's a great solution for you, but it's still a limited market if you're looking to put out a gadget and hoping to get people actually using it. The one you may not have seen is Google Desktop has their sidebar, and this is actually one of my favorites because they focus on having really information-rich widgets. They're not focused on graphics, but they pack a lot of text and information into their sidebar. But their APIs are harder to build to, and it's also bundled with a product that IT departments hate. There's a bunch of security stuff in version 3 where there's data that's sent to Google that might be cached, and just corporate IT departments all over the place are disabling Google Desktop for the enterprise. So they kind of made a bozo move by doing that, and I kind of question how much traction it will get in the enterprise market especially. And then there's Google Personalized Homepage, which is sort of like live.com. You can drag and drop gadgets around Google Homepage if you click that link on the upper right. But it has less functionality, albeit it has better visibility, being it is on a link to from the Google homepage. So where you can go to learn more stuff. Here's some key links. More on eBay Web Services. Again, it's totally free. Free to sign up, free to make API calls. If you get your application certified, which is very easy to do, you can get up to 1.5 million calls per day. So you can do some really serious stuff. As I mentioned, you can build commercial apps on that. The website to note is developer.ebay.com. There's also our Developers Conference, which is here in Las Vegas in June 10th through 12th at the Mandalay Bay. And immediately following this is the eBay Live Conference, which is where eBay power sellers from all over the country, like 10,000 plus, will be there. And if you've never been to an eBay Live Conference, it is crazy. It's not your normal tech conference. So you get a real slice of the eBay community with all its wackiness, all its color. And if nothing else, if you stay just to walk around the show floor for a couple hours, it's definitely worth the experience. So you get free entrance to eBay Live Conference. And the Developers Conference itself is very cheap. We'll have flyers to pass out after the session today if you're interested. The Live.com eBay Gadget, again, is available in the gallery right now at MicrosoftGadgets.com. So you can go and download it, put it on your page, give it a try, give it a whirl. It is beta, so there is some quirks in the UI. Some of the data is not quite right. There's like if it's foreign items, the shipping price isn't right. We're working on that, and we want to improve it, and we would love to hear your feedback. And it's also been open sourced at http://searchgadget.codebase.ebay.com. So it's there today. It's open sourced under commercial friendly license. You can go and play with it. I also encourage you to attend Sanaz, her presentation. She's the program manager for live.com. She'll be giving a presentation, I believe, at 3 o'clock, so it's immediately after, but we have some time over next door in C/D. And I know she has some cool stuff to announce. I won't let it out of the bag, but you should definitely attend there to get more of an overview on live.com and where it's going. Oh, I guess they put this slide in for me. So you can read that. I don't know if I've seen it before. So we do value your feedback, both on the stuff that we've built as well as the session. So we'd love to talk to you. And before I end the session, are there any more questions we can answer? We do have some time here in case there's any more questions.
I want to add one more thing.
Sure.
If for those of you that don't necessarily haven't signed into the Microsoft Gadgets gallery, you might want to do that, because if you register and you browse the gallery and you want to develop or learn more about how to develop in Gadgets, one of the cool things that they automatically turn on for you when you sign in is actually being able to just download the source code directly from the Gadget gallery, as well as the XML manifest. So you'll only see the preview and the add to live.com call to actions on the gallery itself, but when you sign in, you actually get those extra downloads. You get the zip file for you, as well as the manifest. So that's one cool thing that will help you.
Great. So I just want to wrap this up by saying thank you. I think that's probably the most source code you see in the whole session, but hopefully it was useful. So thank you very much.